Thank you so much, guys, for joining today. I am honored to be here and hosting this event with Becky Thomas. Before we actually start having the conversation and having the fireside chat, I would like to say a couple of words about Women in AI and who we are and what we do. For those of you who are attending this event as the first event of Women in AI or WAI, we are a non-for-profit non-for-profit global association or organization with the mission of increasing women representation and participation in AI. We do that by organizing educational events, fireside chats, and talks like this, bringing in thought leaders into the conversation, and creating as much as information as possible about the representation of women in AI and tech. We work both with enterprises and also startup companies and a startup ecosystem to build an unbiased and fair future. If you'd like to be informed of the events that we are putting up, don't forget to follow our pages. You can obviously find our website at womeninai.co, but also you can follow us on LinkedIn. The LinkedIn has different chapters. So obviously I'm joining from Canada. So I would encourage you to actually join the page for Women in AI Canada. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Ellie Ardakani, and I lead the Ottawa chapter under the Women in AI Canada. I have a doctorate in geophysics, so a STEM background, and have been in the industry, in the energy industry for about 10 years now. I am currently the CEO of Meta, which provides digital technologies such as AI solutions to energy, in particular oil and gas sector. Today, I am honored to have with me Becky Thomas. Becky brings 25 years plus experience in technology commercialization. Her expertise is focused on taking the technology innovation from the spark and ideation to full commercialization in the market. She has been instrumental in several startups, including Case, Meridio, Trusted Edge, Next Page, Active Navigation, Strategic SaaS, Gmail, and now she is working with I2K Connect. She has provided volunteer leadership for a lot of organizations throughout her career, which two of them really shines: the Association for Women in Computing and also Girls Who Code. She has been recognized as the top 20 women in technology in 2003 by Federation of Houston Professional Women of Excellence, and she is passionate about mentoring the next generation entrepreneurs, and she's taking charge in a lot of the judging panels for business plans for tech companies and tech startups. And at the end of the day, she is here, so we're going to ask her to just give us a little bit of a background about herself, and then we can continue the conversation with really some hot questions. Becky, back to you.
Well, thank you, Ellie. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for the invitation to share some of my thoughts and knowledge and expertise in this space. Just a little bit about me. I'm a Texan. I'm headquartered in Houston, Texas, and however, I've done several startups throughout my career and have lived on the East Coast, Boston, DC, New York City, and have worked in Belfast, London, and other locations in the UK with the companies that I have worked with. I have been I have lots to share. My good news for the week is my children just gave me my 5th grandchild. So
nice.
I feel like a young grandmother.
That is amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Becky, and sharing your insight and experience with us and our audience. So it does seem like that you've been involved with a lot of tech companies, and I'm going to just jump in because I'm really This is one of those questions that I always want to ask, especially for women who had a long career within very male-dominated sectors, both energy and tech. So at the first place, you have a background, you have a degree in business management, but you kind of joined the tech startups and the tech world. What did really intrigue you to do so?
Well, it's interesting. My previous career was working for my father, who was an attorney in Houston. And this was my first computer to work on was a digital WD-78, which actually had 8-inch floppies. And one was the operating system and one was the data file. And it was on casters, and we rolled it from office to office as we needed it. Through that beginning of my career, the legal industry from a tort reform perspective was driving lower and lower jury verdicts. And so my father said, you need to go and do something. And technology had really intrigued me. And so my first startup that I did was literally selling CD-ROM databases to attorneys of Texas case law for them to do appellate work. And that was my first experience into that. The gentleman who started that company was Morris Miller, and he then went on to found Rackspace, and now he's the founder of a medical company that does robotics that go in and clean hospital rooms. And so it's interesting in our careers, it's always important to stay connected with the people that you always meet, because you never know when they might become instrumental in your career down the road. So what brought me into technology was literally the inspiration that my father gave me about automating his law office when things were still very paper-based. And he was one of the first attorneys to really bring automation into the law office. And so that's what got me started with my first startup. And literally the 13 startups that I have been involved with are all connected through the network of people that I have met along the way through each one of those startups.
That is amazing. So how did you end up in energy from living with a father who was a law attorney?
Yeah. Well, I'm in Houston, Texas.
That is true.
And so with Houston, Texas being the energy capital of the world, at least we like to think so, it has always touched our lives in this community very much. And so 3 of the startups that I have done have been very focused on energy, but I think what really got me involved in it was during the time frame that we did Meridio, I got introduced to MIT's Sloan School of Business, and I was volunteering in their entrepreneur program. They have a program, excuse me, just a minute. They have a program that is executive entrepreneur program that is 2 weeks every year. They fly in CEOs of startup businesses that have been accepted into the program, and they go into a full immersion on how do you take an engineer and make them into a CEO, because typically those two don't mix well. And so these founders of these companies get full immersion into the whole process of commercializing their product. And then they get coupled with a team that will come in from the master's program and work with their company for a month to help them do their go-to-market plans and things of that nature. Well, during that process, I was introduced, and I volunteered to mentor what was called a G-Lab. And this is a globalization team that actually went and worked for a company in New Zealand for a month called Migratech. And this was a nuclear magnetic resonating technology that blended octane and fuels at the refinery. And I was able to make an introduction to that team to Chevron's technology ventures. And that opened the door for me to working with oil and gas companies. And this was several years ago, but it was we were able to get that technology embedded into a test refinery with Chevron. So it's just about how do you get the doors open, I think is really important. So that's how I got into oil and gas, really.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And, you know, I wholeheartedly agree with things can lead to more things to happen in the future. Like if you just not say no and be open to the opportunities, one thing can lead to another thing that it could be really good for not just our own future, but also for the society. So right. Over the years, within your career, so obviously, you know, you have a ton of experience working with different companies, but like, how did the environment really change around you and evolve? Because obviously, even right now, like, you know, we are representing women in AI. I wish there was a situation that we didn't actually need to do that. And, you know, we were all diverse and inclusive and we had all those things already found out, but we don't, right? So we are trying to like create more or promote women within the science and within the tech as much as possible. I cannot imagine how it was like 25, 30 years ago. So can you just tell us a little bit about how things changed through time?
Well, it's interesting. I think there's the good and the bad. I believe that the collective joining of women together in a collective cause helps to raise the visibility of that cause. So if we look back when I was doing leadership around women in computing, you know, that organization had been in existence since 1975. And when I got involved in it, they were still struggling with the same issues, salary, equity, there was not much diversity. It was hard. How do you get a promotion when they were promoting men over women? And it was really, what we used the organization for was for professional development. How do we knock down these barriers that in some instances we create for ourselves? I believe each of us has a voice at the table, and it's being able to communicate the value that you bring. What is your expertise and what can you bring to help facilitate the overall company goal, team goal, project goal? And so it's creating the value that you bring to the organization. Other things that have changed have been, there is much more legislation on the books now, helping us to promote ourselves, to get better pay, and we have to stand up for ourselves and be our own advocates. But when we come together in groups for AI, whether it's AI or women in science or engineering, it is really bringing together a collective tribe who have a common interest and can share and provide examples of how they have tackled certain challenges that they have in front of them as well.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think that's actually a really good advice for the next generation of, you know, the graduate students and the emerging professionals that are coming in as well. And, you know, we see that all over the place. It's not just in energy, but it's also in tech, in every single industry, especially the heavy industries. It's more obvious, from manufacturing to supply chain to mining and metals. Sure. So I think that's a really good point. So I guess now we're going to get a little bit like to the end of the road and talk about the company that you are involved with. I2K Connect, as much as I understood, is providing a solution for especially exploration and production companies to be able to find information much faster through AI. Can you tell us a little bit more about your company?
Certainly. So I2K Connect is all about connecting information to knowledge. And so if we look at the data that's created in the oil and gas space, it's just in the petabytes, whether it's sensor data all the way to very structured data to what I'm going to call corporate structured data. So the reports, the PowerPoints, the Excel spreadsheets that get created that decisions are ultimately made on. And what our company, our founders came out of industry with Schlumberger, Marathon, both in the refining and the production side. And their biggest challenge was breaking down the silos that all this data was in, and how do we help to curate knowledge so that we can find the answers we need and also have the information to train future generations of geoscience and petrophysicists and engineers in the industry. And so what I2K does is we are very focused on natural language processing and computer vision, and the ability to go in and very quickly look at large data sets and come back with what's the information that's in that data, and how can I, whether I'm a petrophysicist or a geologist, I need to find out very specific things to help accelerate my exploration into new areas, or to identify situational events that could be mitigated from a risk profile perspective. And so that's what we do with companies. We OEM our product to players like Schlumberger. We're part of the embedded AI in the Delphi platform. And then we also sell direct to operators who have petabytes of unstructured data in FileShare, SharePoint, or other cloud storage environments. And we very quickly have the ability to analyze that, auto classify it, and provide it through, just like if you were shopping on the internet for something and say I needed to go and find this type of artificial lift strategy, and does this work well in this type of region? And so that's what we do. And one of the cool things that we're doing right now is working with, we just completed a project with DARPA, which is part of the Department of Defense. And DARPA is the research and development arm within the DoD. And we just finished doing a small project associated with Q&A, specifically for communities of practice that are domain specific. And so we're real excited about where that technology is going to be going in the next 5 years.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So, you know, as a founder of a tech startup, I know the challenges that goes around, you know, building an AI product, especially the ones that are kind of more customized, and then commercializing it. It's not an easy task for sure. But one of the things that comes to my mind, and I would love to know your opinion, are, you know, through commercialization of the AI product, through I2K or other companies that you work with, what are the top challenges that comes across when you're talking to a medium to large size company or organization to purchase your product? What are the challenges that comes across? Because to me, a lot of them is like, hey, like, can we do a pilot? But obviously, like, we know that AI doesn't really do good with a small amount of data. So especially if it's on the scientific and computational side. But I would love to know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because that's one of our key elements of working with clients is we go in and we do small pilots. And when I say a small pilot, we typically have it ring fenced so that we have at least a terabyte of data. And we will go in and take them through a 3-step process. The first part is we do an envisioning with them where we identify what is the use case that's going to be the biggest bang for the buck. The other key element is that we make them pay for the pilot, because if they don't have skin in the game, there's no incentive for them to make it successful. And so we make them put skin in the game. We also make them provide us with what are their scenarios for success. What do we have to prove as an AI company that we can do or perform and provide the types of results that they want to see. So everything is, once we get that commitment from them, then we go through the envisioning. We put we will do the processing on the data, and then we'll provide the user interface, and then we do one-on-one training with their testing team so that the testing team understands how to use the product. And we also provide them with use cases and scenarios for those use cases on how to actually operate the software. Because if you just throw it to them and say, go, they're not going to be successful. And I think another big challenge that we have in the industry as a whole is how do we make it repeatable and scalable? One client is going to have different problems than another client. Well, how do you replicate at scale the product in the future? So I think that's one of the challenges that you have to look at as a founder is how do I make this so that I can make money over and over and over again? And how do I price my product so that it's attractive to the larger companies? Because everyone and their brother's trying to sell them something that's AI related. And so that's a whole longer conversation, and I'm always available for mentoring in that area. So it's an interesting scenario, and I don't think you can lock yourself in to one specific because in order to get it sold and get it across the line, you may have to come up with different strategies from a pricing and a deployment standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the fact that the business value has to be there, and you have a very limited time within a pilot to show that we are delivering on that business value for them to take advantage of your product, right?
And that brings up a good point, because a lot of times, people see this as technology. So they think they have to sell into the CIO level, technology level. Well, that's not where you're going to get the money. The money's coming from the business, and the business has a cost justification that they have to go through internally, because they have to sell this concept internally as well. So that's another area where we help our stakeholders in the business sell internally to their stakeholders. And that's some of the very first questions you need to ask these customers are, what do you have to prove to sell it internally? And do you have to show a cost reduction? Do you have to show increased performance? Where does it have to affect your bottom line? And once you understand that, you can start to craft how you commercialize the product for that customer.
Yeah, that's amazing insight and amazing advice, especially for smaller size companies that have really good but niche products in AI, and they would want to commercialize it with bigger companies. Obviously, it's not an easy task again, but it's not an impossible task either.
Well, I would like to make one other comment. There's an organization called Darcy Partners. Yeah. And Darcy, and I don't know if anyone on the phone is involved in commercializing an AI product in the energy space. You need to get on the Darcy Partners Innovation Roundtable. And if you're an innovator with Darcy, they will do an analysis of your company. They'll talk to your customers. You get invited to sit on the Entrepreneur Roundtable, which is every Friday. And it's a great opportunity to learn and also to share ideas and thoughts with others that are trying to sell into the space.
Amazing. Awesome. Yeah, that would be the resource for you all to take advantage of. One of the things that, when we were talking about R2K Connect, I remember on our conversation, something came up and you were talking about a portal that you guys put together called AI Topics.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about AI topics and who are the people that can take advantage of this portal?
Certainly. So our founders are both fellows with the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, otherwise known as AAAI. AAAI is one of the largest and oldest organizations promoting artificial intelligence, and they're a global company. They also have a Women in AI group, or a women's group within that association as well. And they do quarterly meetings. But what happened with AI topics is we started AI topics a long time ago. It was the first portal that provided an aggregation of information associated with artificial intelligence. It has become AI Topics, which is an official publication of AAAI. And what our product does is it goes out and searches the internet every day, about 30,000 sources, and brings in applicable documentation, news, information about the industry of artificial intelligence. And our CTO and chief architect wrote an award-winning algorithm called the genetic algorithm, which goes out and chooses 10 unbiased news stories every day. And then on Tuesday, it goes out, there's an email that goes out that's called AI Alerts. Anyone can go to aitopics.org and sign up for it. And let me put this in the chat so you'll have it. There's the URL for it, but this is one of the ways that we give back to the artificial intelligence community. So
That's amazing.
This also drives the back end of AI Magazine for the association as well.
Awesome. That is great. By the way, guys, if any of you have a question, please put your question into the Q&A box, and then we will assign some time for it at the end of the conversation to answer those questions. All right, so now that we shared that resource with everyone, let's talk about some of the organizations and associations that you were involved with. That you helped toward women representation and being an advocate and mentor. Just tell us a little bit more, and what motivates you to do that, but also what would happen if many of us choose to support this cause. And it's not just for women, but also for men who are on this call. They have to sponsor, they have to mentor as well. Just share with us a little bit about those activities.
So what's interesting is it gets back to building a tribe and a community of individuals who have a common cause. And women in, I'm going to say women in AI or women in STEM, you don't typically see, only 28% of the workforce in the STEM area are made up of women. And what has always been my mantra in this space is I'm a leader of people, and I'm very inclusive of working with everyone. However, my forte is helping to build confidence in others, giving them scenarios and experiences that show how you can break down barriers and how you can drive change. And what's interesting about the Association for Women in Computing is that it was really kind of the foundation for providing not only professional development, but we also went into the high schools and did STEM training in the schools, in the area schools. And then we also, every year, we offered a $20,000 scholarship just for the Houston chapter. But we also had a huge donations from large corporations. So we would go in and meet with the diversity teams of the large hiring companies in the region, and they would commit dollars to help put on the meetings and also to help fund the scholarships. And the way we raised the most money is every year we had a big gala that honored the top women in technology. And we did it just like a gala. You know, we sold tables to the big corporations, and we would have the top 20 women in technology. And so it was all about, and then we also did lobbying at the state level with legislation in Texas. And so it's important to look at what area you're looking to advance in, whether it's in artificial intelligence or whether it is in a specific vertical industry, whether that's energy, healthcare, or whichever. And it's important to make sure that the group of people that you're working with are a good fit for you, that they're not all the same. You want to go into an organization where there is a diversity of capabilities, where you have leaders and you have people who can, and then you have people who are there to learn and share their expertise. The Association for Women in Computing has always been a great anchor for me because it led to future opportunities. And one of those opportunities for me was I had a year of being virtually mentored by Carly Fiorino, who was the CEO of HP at the time. And I was the president of the Association for Women in Computing, and met her at an event. And during that event, she and I got to have some one-on-one time. And I literally asked her, would you be a mentor for me? And of course, you know, here's this woman who's the CEO of a huge corporation who later went on to run for president of the United States, you know, and it's like, you never know if you don't ask someone. So I'm really big about putting out there what I need from an individual or a corporate perspective, because you never know who's going to open a door for you. And she did. And we spent a year. And it was a virtual mentoring where I would email her questions and she would answer me. And so it was just an interesting exchange, and I learned a lot. And what I learned from her is that our worst barriers are ourselves. We individually put up barriers and challenges to ourselves that we shouldn't. So remember that.
Amazing. Yeah, and I mean, finding mentors, it doesn't matter what, you know, industry you're in, it's a really critical point. Even though, you know, for people who have already secured jobs, or they are not in transition in any way, I think being able to actually tap into some other people's experiences and insight without actually living those years, that's amazing, because someone is technically sharing the extract of their life with you when you're reaching out to them and ask for mentorship. That is amazing. The CEO of HPA.
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you another interesting part of this is through the companies that I led, whether it was Meridio or Active Navigation and others, I literally paid for executive coaching during those times in my career, because I was the only woman executive at Meridio at the time. I ran the Americas for them, and everyone else on the executive team were males. And the first time I went to Belfast to work, a young lady came in pushing a tea cart at 4 o'clock and asked me, would I care for tea? And it made me feel, I felt so sorry for her. And I explained to her, honey, in Texas, we don't serve each other. Everyone goes and gets their own. And so what's interesting is now she's CEO of her own company. So it's about sharing those experiences, but what was interesting about the executive coaching is that I was investing in myself by hiring someone. Each time they were different because they had different skill sets, but I interviewed several executive coaches and I found coaches who could help me during that point in my career. And so each of them worked with me for about 6 months and helped me build strategies to counteract how do I deal with all these men when I'm the only executive woman. So it really helped me to learn the skill sets that I needed quickly to gain. So that's another example of where you can bring mentors or executive coaches in.
So that's a really good segue to, I guess, the question that I have about what are some of those lessons that you learned? What are some of those strategies that you can share with us?
Well, one of them was to always be present at the executive table and always have an opinion. Whether it's a good or bad opinion, you need to be vocal. You don't want to just sit there. You know, when a lot of times in my early career, I would walk into a meeting room with lots of men and someone would ask me to go get them coffee. Well, you know, so you know, I would just look at them and I'd say, well, you know, the coffee's just right down the hall on your right. And I would sit down and proceed to get ready for the meeting. You know, and it's, don't let people put you or pigeonhole you in a situation where you shouldn't be. You know, if you need to stop and reset their expectations, you can always do that. And I think we have a question or in the chat.
I think it's in the Q&A
Oh, okay.
box, but yeah, so it is a little bit more on the side of the technical side and less on the fact that we were talking about. But we can get back to the question at 1:45. So I really enjoyed the, you know, one of the strategies that you shared here. So be vocal, and I think that's across the board. Majority of women, especially the ones that are scientists, they're very quiet. They do their job.
Yes,
they do a magnificent
they are
job,
very quiet,
but they are never at the table when the decisions are made.
Right.
And that's always concerning because they are the people who are building the future of AI or technology.
Right.
So they have to be able to be vocal and talk about it, or at least express their opinion.
Well, and I think it's more than that. So, and you're right, women do make up a very large amount of the data scientists and the engineers who are creating next generation AI applications. And it is important for us to take off, to get out of that shell. And there are skill sets that engineers, that scientific people usually don't have, which is communicating in more of a marketing forward way of thinking. They're very much about black and white. This is what the data shows. This is what this is what we can do with the technology. And they have to be able to become an actor and a promoter of why their technology is special and what are the benefits of their technology. And this is one of the hardest things that any technology company has when they're bringing new technology to the market. And that's why they hire people like me who can come in and put the color and the flair around their technology. And communicate that take the technical aspects and communicate that into a business aspect and what value it's going to bring. And so one of the things we always recommended was getting involved with your corporate Toastmasters organization or working within any professional organization and volunteer, be a presenter, do fireside chats, get online live and communicate what your company's doing. You know, now it's get on TikTok and show them what your technology can do. So,
absolutely.
So it's about being that personality for and promoting your technology.
Yeah, and you know, in the long run, it benefits the company, but also it benefits the career of the person who is actually doing it. And I feel like women are hesitant a lot of time to put themselves out there and be part of the conversation. There's always this hesitation that I don't know where it's coming from. So, you know, as part of a lot of the associations and networking events that try to promote women in one way or another, we really try to encourage women to get out there and talk to people and get engaged with different volunteer activities, whatever they are, depending on what their interests are. And there is always a little bit of a resistance, but also I kind of think that there is a little bit of a lack of a sponsorship as well within the corporations and within the associations itself, which kind of comes even to professional societies. So one thing that I would like to get your opinion on in terms of what strategies can be played for women to be able to take a seat in the leadership. You went, you know, you started your career, obviously the first day you were an executive, and then you moved up to be an executive in different companies. How did that career path actually evolve, and how were you able to claim your seat?
I was able to claim my seat by showing results. And a lot of it was by being present and being out there. So the first startup, well, I guess this was really the second startup that I did. We were a software application development company in Houston that developed applications around document management and records management. And we became the first Microsoft certified partner in Houston and the first authorized training center for Microsoft. This was in the early 90s. And during that period of time, I was fortunate enough to work with a great team, and we won the sole source contract for Continental Airlines. And that was a $30 million contract. And that was what really springboarded my career to have a seat at the table. Because during that period of time, we worked with Continental to create what was called Airport in a Box. And it was literally rolling out airports globally for them. And we worked with multiple companies to facilitate that, but it was really creating visibility in the marketplace. And it really taught me the ability to orchestrate multiple stakeholders, and how do you balance and juggle all of those balls at the same time while still balancing the ability to deliver the solutions that needed to be in place and have great customer service to support it. And so I think I matured from a professional perspective and gained confidence in my capabilities, not only to communicate, but also to influence decisions and to negotiate with the people on the team, both internal and external stakeholders, to get everyone rowing in the same direction so that we could all be successful.
Amazing, amazing. That is great. So I would go back to that question in the Q&A. So the question is about the NLP. So you mentioned that the NLP is widely used by your company in AI. Could you please describe what is a specific case or use case for NLP in the energy industry?
Sure. So, in what we're specifically doing now with natural language processing is we can go and analyze content, and this is anything from well logs to log reports, to all the way from semi-structured stuff all the way up to structured stuff. all the data that's created at the wellhead that comes in, not sensor data, but anything that's text-based. We use natural language processing to go in and quickly examine that. We build a very large index and have the ability to go in and very quickly do auto classification against our knowledge bases that we've created over the last 6 years, and the ability to auto classify against the taxonomies that we have created that are domain specific. We've also created what's called oil field places, which is a registered product for us that has identified over 15,000 wells, basins, and fields globally. And so we can very quickly go in and show an individual, say I'm a geologist working in the Eastern Med, and I want to see all of the wells that we've drilled in a specific lease area. I can very quickly pull that up and pull up all the documentation associated with that. I can then go in and do tabular extraction of data that's in the daily drilling reports or the final reports that are coming out of that. So there's a lot that we do in that area, and would be more than happy to speak offline.
For sure. Awesome. That is great, Becky. We have a couple of more minutes to go. I'm going to get a little bit personal and ask you for, what would be your personal mantra? And if more than one, you're more than welcome to share.
So, life is, our careers are very intertwined with our personal lives. And I think I have 5 mantras that I kind of live by in my professional life. And the number 1 is change is constant. Don't get too comfy, because something's going to change and you're going to have to either reinvent yourself or, just look at this last year and what we all had to deal with the pandemic. Look at how we thought the beginning of 2020 was just rolling along in the first quarter, and then all of a sudden we all just got slapped down and it said, life's going to change. Now you better rethink everything. So change is constant, and it's all about how you respond to that change that makes you successful. The other big one is network, and then network more. I'm a huge believer in networking. I'm in multiple organizations, and depending on where I've been in my career, I have been in different organizations. And then I'm a real big believer in finding a mentor, no matter where you are along your career path. It's always great to just have coffee talks with people and ask them questions. And if there's someone that's in the industry that you want to meet or get to know, reach out to them. LinkedIn is a great vehicle for that. The other thing is, if you do have the ability to hire an executive coach, hire an executive coach. Just think of it as professional development and enriching yourself. And I've always written mine off on my taxes. The other big thing is about be authentic and use social media. I believe social media is a great way to promote not only your professional brand, but your personal brand, and it gives you the ability to be known in the industry. And so I'm a big believer in that. And then the other thing is about sharing your talents, and whether this is volunteering in organizations. When in the beginning of my career, there were a lot of senior executive men I could never get in to see. And so what I did was I volunteered at the organizations they were volunteering at, because that gave me instant access to them in a non-business setting where we could build a relationship that could then be transferred into a business scenario. And so I've always found that giving my talents has always come back tenfold for me. And so I'm a big believer in sharing my talents with everyone.
That's awesome. These are amazing mantras, but also amazing advice to the younger generation. I'm a millennial. There are a lot of Gen Zs coming into play. I mean, they are pretty good with social media. They are
Yes.
everywhere on social media, but at the same time, for them to understand how much volunteer work and actually, you know, the karma, the business karma, how it works is really important. So, you know, you mentioned something about being involved. Like, what are the top societies that you have in mind, at least for the people who are on the energy side, to get involved with in terms of, you know, volunteering and meeting people?
So I'm a big believer in the Society of Petroleum Engineers, SPE. They're a global worldwide organization. They need volunteers both at the local, national, and international levels. They are also just announced today that they are going to be considering merging with AAPG. And so that, I think that's a perfect match. But that's a great organization. And what we do as our company is we provide an AI mentor roundtable for university students who are in their doing their PhDs or masters. We do this quarterly. And at this roundtable, we talk about, you know, what are the important things for them to focus on as they're starting to look for their career journey. And kind of, we just mentor them. So our CTO and our CEO and chief architect get on the roundtable with them and myself, and we just share and answer questions and provide them with some thought leadership on where they should look and where they shouldn't look and what should they be testing now and things of that nature. If you are in the AI space from a research and development perspective, I would look at the Department of Energy in the US, and I'm sure that there is a counterpart in Canada. So looking at your governmental agencies that might have grant and foundation monies available, and participating in some of they call them discovery days, where you can learn about future plans that they are looking at developing, and does my technology fit into that space is a good place as well. And then I'll put in the chat window a couple of other organizations that you might want to get involved with.
Awesome. Now, talking about, you know, mentorship, we actually have a question that I would read. I'm assuming it's Begum. She or he asks, how do you kindly get someone to be your mentor? Do you have any suggestions on where someone should find a mentor?
So mentoring, I have always looked for someone that is in the industry, in the domain expertise area that I'm looking for. And what I have typically done in the past is either started out with LinkedIn or Twitter and just sent them direct messages saying who I am, what I'm trying to accomplish with a mentor. So I am looking to get some professional input from someone with this specialty, or, you know, it's not looking for a job. I mean, that's the first thing that most people think when you reach out to them as a mentor. They think, oh my God, this person needs a job. I can't get them a job. So it's really more about asking, you know, telling them who you are and asking what you want to accomplish with a mentor. The other thing is talk to recruiters in the industry. So people who are doing the job hiring, they, you know, talk to them, ask them about who they see in the area that you're living and working in, or the industry that you're looking at transitioning to. They could add value there and answer some questions in that arena as well. But typically you just have to ask. I mean, what's the worst they're going to say is no.
Exactly.
So
That's what I was about to say.
It's okay if they say no, you just go to the next person.
Exactly. Awesome. Great advice. We have one more question and 2 minutes to answer the question. How has the process of validation of the problem and solution changed as you have commercialized products? That's a really great question.
That's a great question, because a lot of times we will have a vision of what the initial product should look like, but then you will get feedback from various channels, and you need to take that feedback and you literally need to do analysis on it and think about, is this something that's going to scale across multiple clients? So what we do from an I2K perspective is we take in feedback from our clients, and then we look at what is going to have repeatability across all of our customers. And then we prioritize those capabilities against what the potential revenue will be. And that's basically how we do that. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions by email. I'll put my email in here, and you're more than welcome to send me a question, and I'll be more than happy to respond.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Becky. It was a pleasure having the conversation with you. Thank you for being an inspiration for younger generation who are coming into the energy or AI, building their career, but also thanks for sharing your actionable insight about commercializing AI products within the energy sector and how it actually can help with a lot of the processes that have been very time consuming and costly for a lot of the organizations within energy. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate you. And I hope that everyone got something out of this. One thing that I would say, I really love that change is constant. So get on with it. That's a really, really good mantra to have. Awesome. Thank you so much, Becky. We wish you a happy rest of the day.
Thank you, and enjoy your afternoon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.